All right, Kerrod, so I'm going to take a quick break and talk about one of the sponsors of the podcast, which is Back to Basics putting mirrors. I use the Pro Path putting mirror. I'm sure you're aware of it. It was actually designed by Grant Field and Richard Woodhouse. It's what I like about it. It's got this natural arc on it with 15 degrees, which they've drawn there, which is the average arc of a putting stroke. Now, I know we've spoken before that you love putting, my friend, but have you, Back to Basics putting mirror is something that I use every day in a putting lesson. It helps us identify. I talk about finding 90, which is 9 degrees to the club face angle in relation to body alignments to help me find square. Do you have a putting drill or an exercise that you use with your students that you'd like to share with us on the Back to Basics putting segment?
Yeah, for sure. I think anything revolving around start line is incredibly important because manipulating the face or trying to consciously manipulate the face throughout the stroke is always going to be a challenging task, especially when you've got to be very externally focused on what you want to achieve. And having the references of the degrees of the fanning of the mirror of the Back to Basics is great because it gives you a concept that the putting stroke works on an arc, not straight back and straight through that a lot of people assume, even if you have a face balance putter. My favorite exercise would be to get yourself set up on a mirror such as that, because little subconscious program that runs in your head by having the awareness of the template, number one, down on the ground, is always going to embed that natural arcing motion and reiterate that within your subconscious that is how a putter is meant to work. But then from there, I would expand upon and simply just do your gate drill of getting 2 tees and placing them probably about half a putter length out in front of you and just wider than the golf ball. Well, we could start probably about this wide, and when you knock 3 in a row through, then bring them a bit closer, bring them a bit closer, bring them a bit closer, and see to as great a proficiency of how close you can get the tees together where the ball can only just fit through and then go into a hole on the other side. The one trick with this is to not focus on the tees. Focus on the hole in your mind's eye and think about putting it in the hole. The tees are there as a visual representation of your proficiency to match the face up with your intention of your target. So straight uphill putt, chuck the Back to Basics mirror down on the ground. That'll be a great reference to see the visual of the arc. Place 2 tees a short distance apart, halfway between yourself and the hole on like a 6-foot putt, and see how close you can get the tees together to still be able to roll the ball into the cup while focusing on the outcome of seeing your ball roll into the cup, not trying to avoid the tees. Because if you focus on the tees, you're going to hit the tees.
That's so interesting. Oh, I've used that gate drill many, many times. And so what you're telling us there, to use the tees there as more of a feedback station, not so much a goal. So basically it's feedback to, if I hit the right tee or the left tee, use it as feedback. Don't use it as a goal to try and get through the tees itself. That's
I would say in putting, a lot of the time, because it's not as detrimental of effect if you get it wrong, we would tend to see that a lot of players, and I would probably dare to say 90% of players would focus just on getting it through the tees and go, oh, I did it. And then they kind of forget about, well, you still needed to get the distance to get to the hole, or I don't know, strike the center of the face, whatever it was. But let's say that you're working on your swing path, for example, and you've got the old typical noodle behind you and you want to come under the noodle.
Yes.
You don't have the ball down in front of you, swing under the noodle, shank it into the building and go, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I get you.
It's still got to be connected to a result.
I get you. That's really good. That's great advice. Coming from a guy who loves putting there. So that brings us to the end of the Back to Basics putting segment there. You get discount code below, TM15 gets you 15% off. That's all written down there below. Follow the link, takes you to the website, delivers worldwide. You can also get the gates that Kerrod's talking about that comes with the Pro Path putting mirror. There's also a new really cool case as well that you can get from that can help you travel around the world with it, like a hard case there. So yeah, sponsor the podcast. I actually coach the CEO of it, and he's doing some great stuff. And an interesting thing on that before we close on that segment, Kerrod, this is an interesting one with him, is I use a stats collection app called Draw More Circles with my students, right, which helps identify a person's students' strengths and weaknesses, right? And the CEO, co-founder of Back to Basics Putting Mirrors, Nick Steiner, he his putting stats are incredible. Like he to scratch is always, he's like a 10 handicap golfer, right? And to scratch, he's 4 shots better putter. And because he uses the mirror a lot, right? Regularly, religiously, but his putting is just so good. And you can see it there. Like he himself could use the statistical information that from himself as such a great case study, because how much attention he loves putting, right? He loves it. And his putting stats are through the roof. Like it's incredible when you see his Draw More Circles app. It's like -11, -6, putting +4. It's like, what? It's like, it's incredible how good he is at
Sounds
it.
like Nick and myself need to combine as a team. I'll just hit the ball and he can putt for me. How about that?
That's true. You do flush it. So that brings us to the end of the Back to Basics putting segment. Like I said, link is below there. Get your TM15, get your 15% off, and they deliver worldwide. Support the people that support us, that keep the podcast going.